Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have with me once again Ivan Bebek. He's the president and CEO of Cayden Resources. This is a company that I've been following now since about January of this year when I first met Ivan up in Vancouver. Ivan is, as I say, the president and CEO of the company. He oversees basically all the things going on there. He has over 14 years experience in financing, foreign negotiations and acquisitions in the mineral industry, and his understanding of the capital markets and ability to position, structure, and finance companies. I think this is a real strong point that is very often missing from junior exploration companies. Well, Ivan brings those skills to the table, but more importantly, let's say of equal importance, is Ivan's ability to know what his skills are and where they end, and he has a very strong ability to attract very strong talent. To build a mine requires a lot of diverse talents, and Ivan is able to attract a lot of really top-notch people to his management team, which I think is always a key to successful entrepreneurs, and Ivan has had a very good track record in the past. He was a co-founder of Cayden Resources, now Sanko Gold. It's a company that was sold off and made shareholders a lot of money. So Ivan is back to do it once again, and the way things are going, and I'm talking very enthusiastically because I do own shares of the stock myself. I am one of my larger holdings in my own portfolio, so I'm excited to have Ivan back. Welcome, Ivan. It's good to have you with me again.
Thanks, Jay. It's definitely a very good pleasure to be back on your show.
Always good to have you. Always good to have successful people on the show. Let's put it that way. And your flagship property now is the El Burquino property in Mexico. Now, it's my understanding that you really only sort of preliminarily looked at half of that property, but on that half, you've identified 9 priority targets. And the thing that really impresses me is the first 3 that you've put drill holes into, they've been a success. Talk to us a little bit about what you found so far and what the upside potential is here on just this first 9 priority targets.
Sure. Well, you've done a great job introducing us, and it's an incredible team, and with an incredible project, you always attract the best people, and that's your job as a CEO to make sure that's happening. But here it's been quite easy because when we got into Burquino, we saw the opportunity to find a major, big, strong, open-pit gold district or a big gold system. And, we started in a couple areas that were fairly explored, or a little bit of work has been done on them in some past mining back in the 80s. And we've expanded that into now 3 areas. And one thing you've got to take away from what I talk about today is these are 3 targets on only half the property and 3 of 9 targets. And everywhere we've drilled, the geology's repeated itself. And actually had a meeting with an analyst earlier today, and he was complimenting that, and he's actually been to site. And what he was saying was, it's one thing when you find 3 or 4 deposits in a big land package, and it's encouraging, but to see the same rocks, the same geology in each one, to find 3 or 4 as we have, as far as 5 kilometers apart, it really is a excellent sign that we're in a really big system that's repeating. And if you're in a system that's repeating and you have a lot more targets to drill, which we do, that's what can lead to major world-class gold discoveries, something that's, way into the multi-million ounces. And I think that's our real potential here. The 3 targets we've drilled, altogether we've drilled, I believe, about 100 holes. We've announced about 92 of those holes, and I believe every hole is hit except for 2 holes that missed the target because we lost them in a footwall. We didn't quite get to the target zone, which is about a 98 or 97% success rate, which is outstanding. And most of those holes were step-out holes. So it really gives a testament of the consistency of the system. And the word that I like the most when I hear it from the field visits that I go and take with a geologist at site is predictability. And the one thing that really makes mines work and exploration exciting when you're finding all the really good gold grades from surface is to hear the word predictability and it increasing as we get further into the system. So, it gives us the real good confidence that each of these targets that we're drilling, we think they have the merit of potentially being 1 to 3 million ounces. And that's a good range, but it's premature to really establish a full number, high or low, just on the basis that we have not had the luxury of having full access by our permits into these targets. And what I mean by that is we're drilling half or a third or 20% of the mineralized strike lengths on surface in each of these areas, and we're not drilling very deep. We're drilling predominantly everything we've drilled and discovered is in the top 100 meters right from surface. So we drill down to as far as 200 meters. The mineralization is very strong and actually gets wider in some areas as you go deeper, but ultimately we're basically scratching the surface on these targets. we're establishing, what anyone technical who's following us can see is a start of ounces that will end up being, well north of 1 million ounces combined, and probably 2 or 3 million ounces with the first 3 targets and 6 more targets to go, which we'll be drilling in the next 6 to 9 months.
One thing I'd like to tell my listeners, Ivan, is, and really suggest very strongly that they go to your website, and I don't have that in front of me. Can you tell us what that is, just to make sure I get it right?
Yeah, our website is it's www.caydenresources.com, and Cayden is spelled Cayden resources.com, so the word resources is spelled as it sounds.
Yeah, and the reason I would suggest people go there and look at the corporate presentation, and you'll get pictures of what's going on, because the pictures are so important to me. If you look at the pictures of those 9 targets, they're relatively close together. So conceivably, Ivan, I believe, it seems to me anyway, that you may be able to mine those from surface and have one central, possibly a heap leach operation going, where you'd feed one major heap leach from all these different deposits. Is that a concept that you guys are looking at now?
Yeah, absolutely. They all lie within about a 7-kilometer radius, and that's an extremely short distance to have multiple large plus million-ounce deposits. So you said it. You've hit a very good point there that we appreciate with this project, and so does anyone who's seen it in person, is that you would build one mine, one plant, likely heap leach as well as flotation, because we do have copper, and the recoveries are outstanding in our preliminary metallurgical numbers. But, when you can look at having 3 or 4 mines, hypothetically, in one scenario that operate out of one mine, think of the cost you saved. You don't have to build 3 mines. You can build one mine to mine all 3 of those deposits that become mines, and that's what we're dealing with here. So, not only does it have the attractive discovery potential of a huge amount of gold ounces, but the infrastructure and the accessibility and the opportunity to build one mine to mine all these deposits in one central area with very short distances to each target is what's going to really make this thing a very special deposit in terms of profitability down the road when it actually becomes a fully operating mine.
Could you give our listeners a sense of what your average grades are? I know you haven't yet calculated a resource, I believe, but can you give a sense of what you might expect in the ways of north of a gram per ton, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely north of a gram. I wouldn't be at liberty right now to comment without a 43-101 on the exact grade, but I would say it's quite a bit north of a gram. It'd be closer to the 2 gram or possibly better than 2, and the 1.5 to 2.5 gram range is probably fair to give at this time. So we don't know the end grade of what it's going to be, and if you add the copper to it, we think it'll definitely carry it well over 2 grams, and both of them will make sense from a metallurgical perspective. But this is what you would call a higher grade open pit mine in Mexico, from what we can see to some of the comparable mines out there. Goldcorp's mining at 0.69 grams per ton, and there's a few other mines that are sub a gram. This one's is itching on and getting close to 2 grams per ton, or possibly better, or easily better with the copper, and that's something that I think is a major factor in what we're discovering. It's something that will end up paying our shareholders very well with every discovery hole that we add to the project.
You mentioned metallurgy, which is always very, very important. Can you give us some sense of what your early metallurgical studies are showing?
Yeah, so we see the deposits in 2 ways. We see a significant amount of gold that's in the oxide, the top 70 or so meters from the surface, which we think heap leach would be absolutely the most common way that you'd want to mine that. And our early standard leach processing numbers were at about 97% recovery, which really doesn't get much better than that. And then as far as the copper that's found more, at depth once you go below 100 meters, you look at the flotation and in the flotation circuit, and a capex for something like this doesn't appear to be overwhelming. It would be in the $150 million range, which is quite low comparatively. We look at recoveries through over 90% of the copper, and then you would leach the concentrate to get the gold portion out after that. But your value per ton, we think, would be comparable with being one of the most valuable ores per ton in Mexico for projects like this in terms of a flotation plant. So you have 2 extremely valuable ore types that you're encountering. And the big thing for us, and as far as we've gone with metallurgy so far, is we've really identified that there's no red flags, there's no metallurgical challenges that really concern us. Mm-hmm. If anything, they're pointed towards extremely profitable ways to extract the gold out of the rock. And that's something that, we needed early on before we committed, major expenditures to exploring, drilling, and taking the project through feasibility over the next 12 to 24 months to an actual mine.
When do you expect to come out with a resource calculation?
So that's a great question that I'm starting to get asked more often as of lately, because the amount of drilling we've done is exciting, and we feel internally you don't want to sell your deposits short and come out too early and paint your company with a smaller deposit when you see much more ounces to be found in the project. And so the only thing holding us back there, Jay, is the permitting, which is now we expect that in the next 2 weeks we'll get some really, really big permits that will allow us to drill a lot more of these known targets that we see obvious strike length. Once we get this next round of permits in the next few weeks, that will give us a chance to really drill out the first 3 targets and start to test some additional targets that we haven't got to yet. But on the back of that, I'd say Q1 of next year is a very reasonable time frame to see our first resource. And and internally we think it'll be comfortably over 1 million ounces of gold. That's something we feel very strongly about. But I could expand on that, but I won't at this time. I'll just let the audience know that there's a lot of very obvious drilling that will add to that number between now and when we get a chance to drill all of those meters.
Yeah, indeed. And of course, we want to let our listeners know, again, we mentioned sort of a possible range of what the grades might be, but the listeners should really keep their eyes focused on the 43-101 when it comes out, because that will tell us more definitively what the grades are. But certainly as I look at some of these intersections that you guys have produced, they're very, very impressive, and it suggests to me the possibility, Ivan, I know you're not looking at that now, but the possibility that there could be some underground mining sometime in the future. But my goodness, you have so many targets now to look at, possibly, probably, I think, in my view, a multi-million ounce surface deposit. So clearly you're not thinking about underground workings or anything like that now. But as I, again, look at this map that you have on your website, I see these target areas that you have that are closely linked together. And what I'm thinking to myself is, my gosh, these things might be all linked in one giant rich feeder zone somewhere underneath. Any thought along those lines?
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. And for those of you who have been following our press releases, we've drilled at least 1 or 2 100-gram per ton holes in 3 targets. And what that means is when you take the grade of the gold that you've drilled and you multiply it by the width of the intercept that you find, you generally, by rule of thumb, you get a number. And in our case, when you get over 100 grams per ton, it generally will in itself signify that this could be a major discovery. So we've done that 3 times, or in 3 different deposits. We've done it multiple times in some of these targets. But when you look at some of the grades, especially at Peña or Azteca, or even at Angostura, the most recent discovery, you're getting 1.5 ounce type of material that's coming into these deposits that are on surface. And so what geologists on our team and independent geologists have seen this around the world. They've been in some deposits, and I believe Newmont has one in New Zealand, where they found the Golden Cross vein into one surface deposit, and that ended up being a 3 million ounce feeder vein that came into that one deposit. So far, we believe we have 3 opportunities to find those, because we have 3 deposits in different areas that we believe are all in one system. But you're right to assume that that's a major upside potential down the road. It's something that we really want to test and drill early, but we have so much stuff to drill right by surface, disseminated open pitable type of deposits, which is the low-hanging fruit, that our focus will be there first. But once we get enough holes into some of these targets, that's when you'll get a real good idea of the shape of the mineralization and where the feeder structure could really be coming up from. And when you get into targeting those, that's where you take the multi-million ounce number and you're putting, a really good number in front of that, is when you start to add these as a secondary major upside potential. So not only do we have a tremendous amount of strike length on surface or areas on surface to drill with very, very repeated, obvious geology, predictable geology, open pit targets, but now in 3 of the areas that we've drilled and found deposits so far, we've got potential feeder zones in each one of those deposits. So, that's extremely encouraging. It would be, gravy on top of everything else, and it would really take us to the next level of having something that would be, a world-class major gold system. And we think, so far from what we've seen, that everything's pointing towards something much bigger here. And we think there's going to be a lot of exciting drill results to come out of these targets, the ones we've already been drilling and the new ones that we're going to drill. And, I think the hard question, the hard answer is, how much do you think is there? We don't know, but we know there's enough there right now that will likely make a very, very profitable mining scenario down the road.
Yeah. Well, it all sounds very good, Ivan, but I've been in this business 35 years. Probably you're not even that old, but I've been around this business. You're older than that, but not much. I've been around this business a long time, and I know there are always challenges. So what do you foresee as some of the challenges that your company might be facing going forward? That's one question. Secondly, what goals do you have for this company by the end of this year?
Oh, those are two great questions. Every good story is too good to be true. It's usually not true if it doesn't have challenges. And the one that we all face is general market conditions, timing, and financing. And I think we're all in a very forward-pointed gold market that's getting better. It's we describe it as being in the turn of the market, not quite. The market hasn't quite turned yet, but it's turning to the right direction. So I think that's a low risk. The one thing that we've experienced so far is permitting. And it's not a challenge that it's unattainable. It just takes a bit more time than you'd expect. We're running about a month to a month and a half late on each permit we apply for, and that's simply a more of an education process with this state in Mexico, which is very friendly towards mining. But there's a new government, and we're finding ourselves just educating a bit more of what we're doing and convincing them that we're not actually mining the deposit yet. So to surmount this challenge, we've integrated ourselves more with Semarnet, which is the Mexican permitting agency, and we've educated them a lot of what our plans are, and I think that we're going to see a lot better permitting timeline going forward with this project. But, for the major things that you look at infrastructure, you would look at metallurgy, you would look at continuity of resource, and these are the three most important, and I'd say we have 10 out of 10s in all three of those so far. And so I think that the only challenge that I could really attribute the project with at this stage, although there could be more down the road, would be just the time of permits. So investors may wait an extra month, a month and a half on some of the permits that we expect. But as of this fall, we'll have enough permits to cover us for the next 12 to 18 months to drill readily until we get into feasibility. And that gives us time to be continually drilling and exploring in that, and as we get more permits. Our objective this fall is fairly aggressive. We do own a second piece of land in the Guerrero Gold Belt that a lot of people have known us for. It's called Las Cayas. It sits in between the two pits that make up the 16 million ounce Los Filos mine. That piece of land is called Las Cayas, and it's something we value, to be in the multi-million-dollar value range. And I'll quantify that by saying we sold land around Los Filos that the mine needed last year for $16 or $15.7 million. And, we think and believe this piece of land is worth a lot more because it actually has ounces. And if you look at the mine plan of this mine on the 43-101 reports for it, and it's from Goldcorp's website, you'll see their mine plan includes this piece of land. So we would like to be in a position with the sale of that land by the end of this year, plus our current cash position with at least $40 to $50 million cash in our treasury, which is basically $1 per share in cash, and we'd like to have 2 or 3 drills turning on Barqueño as we carry on with the additional targets and we expand on the existing targets that we've discovered. So we plan to be exceptionally aggressive. We think the market is going in a direction that's going to reward us, as it has been doing so for us since the beginning of this year. And, one point I'll make, and I made it in a recent presentation I did in Vancouver, was our project success or our stock price success is very indicative of our project success, meaning that, if we were good at telling our story, we could never achieve the kind of performance we've had. It's really the project that's driving everything, and the project's asking for more drills. It's asking for more money, and we're going to give it that to expose as much value as we possibly can for our shareholders.
Well, very good. And one of the outstanding points about what you've been able to do there, Ivan, is raise money and do it efficiently. So congratulations on that. Very few juniors have been able to do that, and that is very, very important. And clearly this second property you have should help you continue that success in funding. So very, very important, a very exciting story. We want to get you back because there's a few more questions I want to ask, and by the time we have you back another time, there will be more ground to cover. So, but we are out of time for now. I want to thank you very much, Ivan, for being with us. It's a pleasure talking with you. I really love the story, and so I want to have you back again sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Jay. It's a real pleasure being on your show, and any time that works with you, look forward to it. Thank you very much.